recording here, and then I can start recording here, and uh, there. So there we go. So I think that is it. I think we're recording. Yeah, we're recording. So, okay. So you're in New York, Josie. You're in New York.
Happy New Year and you.
And so you were telling me earlier that you can't. They're doing the Tell me about what you were saying earlier about the vaccine passport thing.
I may be in for the night. I booked this little hotel and I'm just set up to podcast and chat with my friends. I've got a few drinks for New Year's Eve, you know. But no, there's a popular club that I go to visit some of my friends, and a lot of them are very excited because they don't have to wear masks, which like now they just have to get the vaccine and show up with a vaccine passport, and then they're allowed in the front door. So that's some type of victory, I suppose, for people who are cheering for this and thinking it's great that they can party all night at the club with a permit granted from the county, Onondaga County here. This is Syracuse, New York.
I'll be right back. Say the whole story. I'll be right back. I'm going to get something real quick. I'll be right back. 5 seconds.
Okay. Yeah, so I'm in Syracuse, New York, and a lot of these policies from New York City are making their way down here. So you have to go now to the choice that they have, the condition, if restaurants that were given a permit to stay open by the city, they can have either mask mandates all night long inside the bar, you know, which is almost, you know, that's like coercing the establishments, these businesses, to enforce the mandates on the vaccines by checking passports at the door. So a lot of
what do you mean? What are the passports? I'm sorry to interrupt. I wanted to ask that.
COVID passports.
What is that?
Passport.
What is that?
Yeah, that's where you show on your phone the Excelsior app up here in New York. Which I'm not going to say that I knowingly went out of my way to try to bypass or circumvent this law, but I kind of looked into skirting this law. So
probably easy to do. You looked into it, yes. Hypothetically, it's possible. Maybe it might be possible to actually hypothetically get around it. Hypothetically, if one were so inclined.
Yeah, I mean, I just don't want to be around all this energy anyway. It kind of, you know, brings me down, and I just can't wait to get back to Florida. So I'm just biding my time and playing it safe.
So
I don't get into trouble in New York and be stuck here.
So it's an app. It's an app, Excelsior app, huh?
Yeah, that holds. I think there's got to be room for multiple vaccinations. So the first and second, you know, it keeps track of your medical history. So the way that this has been rolled out, I'm sure there's plenty of room for, you know, information about your private medical data to be shared with. By, you know, whatever party. So it's like, I think it goes into some type of medical portal, and it's all controlled through an app that shows your vaccination status, and it's tied to your name, your ID, and your picture and everything. So it's specific, and I don't think two people can use the same one. So it's kind of hard to bypass.
Yeah, they made it pretty hard. I see that.
Yeah, and they're ratcheting up the pressure on this too. So the more that they roll this out, the more they normalize it, the more they kind of clamp down on compliance. So.
I wonder if this new mayor Abrams is going to roll back some of those restrictions. When's De Blasio leaving office?
Too. I didn't even see that was that didn't make a whole lot of noise this election. I guess De Blasio lost recently.
No, he didn't lose. He didn't lose.
I don't know much about the new mayor.
He didn't lose. He had to. They elected De Blasio. Apparently, they elected De Blasio for 2 terms. I don't know what's wrong with those people, but apparently he's at a term limit. He had 2 terms, so he couldn't run again. So that's why you didn't hear much about it. One reason is because De Blasio wasn't. I thought so. I thought that at first, and then I found out that motherfucker has been mayor of New York for 8 years. Since about Occupy Wall Street times. Like, literally.
He retired after 2 full terms. Yeah, wow. I
Can
mean,
you imagine?
at a certain point, they fall in love with their captors and they like the boot on their neck. I guess you know, it's comforting.
Stanford, what was it? Stanford syndrome, something syndrome. But
Yeah, like with the mask mandates coming back, people are like, oh no, like they'll either blame a scapegoat, like by proxy, they'll find someone else to blame rather than the authority, and they'll say, well, if you just complied, or if it's like two steps forward, one step backwards, like it almost is a relief once they're like, oh, we don't need the mask if we just get the vaccine, So it's all in how they roll it out, and it's a psychological rollout because they really get people, frustrated and stressed out and broken down to the point they'll accept the terms. It's,
but
it's
there's a
really
shit. It's
like a big ask.
a matter of fact.
Stuff.
Speaking of people from there, sorry to interrupt. Go ahead. I want to let you finish. It's a little bit of a lag, so excuse me if I seem like I'm interrupting you. Go ahead.
No, we're working on the bugs still.
Mm-hmm.
New territory.
So I was at the laundromat today. So this is how many New Yorkers are here right now, and New Jerseyers. Is I was at the laundromat and I saw someone that looked just like a coworker, and I was staring at this guy, and I was like, Brad? And he was like, no, man. No, and I was like, oh, you look just like my coworker. And he's like, no, man, I'm from New Jersey. I just got here yesterday. I was like, so that's how many, it's like, but what hypocrites they are. What hypocrites those people are.
350,000 New Yorkers. New York lost 350,000 residents in 2021.
2021? That's it? It's got to be more than that.
I would think more. I guess just in 2021.
Well, there's how many people? Go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, well, Florida has a surplus of residents. They gained like 220 or 200,000.
No, we've got over a million. I heard of. I've heard over.
They're the most productive members.
Florida, you're freezing up on me. Are you there?
Yeah.
Okay. You're. It's just that you can hear me though. Yeah. Florida population growth 20. I've heard it was over a million. Florida ranked second in U.S. for population growth, and this was as of December 29th, 2021. It says, it says
was under Florida over Texas.
It just says Florida. The sun here. This is South Florida agent. According to U.S. Census Bureau, Florida went up 211,000. So, I thought it was more. I thought it was like a million. Data shows that the population grew by 392, almost 400,000.
That's on record.
From 2020 until 2021, it went up 200,000, and then in 2021, so this year, the nation's population grew by 300. I guess according to the U.S. Census Bureau, Florida grew from July 2020 to July 2021, 211,000. Well, how many of these New Yorkers have second? A lot of them are just like they keep a residence in New York. I don't know why you would. And then they have second homes down here, but that's only the rich ones, I guess. I thought it would be more than 211,000, though. I thought it would be. Census shows big population growth in Florida. Chime in whenever you want. I'm just gonna look through this when I'm just gonna see what this one says.
This is according to census and compliance with census too, because a lot of people are under the radar. I mean,
yeah.
You see it with the traffic all year round in the summertime, in the wintertime now, it's unbearable.
Oh, no, I'm seeing a lot of, in the parking lot here by my house. You know, my house is, right on the borderline of ritzy and seedy area, so it's, right on the border. And there was, a New York license plate truck, and there were people in there sleeping in the parking lot in the truck. It was, an old Bronco. So, the other day on the Turnpike station, I saw, 4 or 5 U-Hauls from New York, U-Hauls with towing cars that had New York license plates. So they're coming down here in droves. They really are. Every time I go to this grocery store by my house, it's called Joseph's Classic Market. It's kind of the ritzy place. You can see the New Yorkers. You can tell that the ones that are New Yorkers, easy. Because most
I
of them
don't
are
know how
wearing
they're going to be
masks.
able to sustain.
Hmm?
I don't know how New York is going to be able to sustain. I mean, with all the crime on the rise and, you know, the government, taking care of so many people, the exorbitant social welfare programs being abused,
As long as they,
and just like,
hmm as long as
yeah,
they
the
keep get, as long as they keep getting bailed out by the federal government, they'll be fine. Once that sweet federal money stops coming in, places like California and New York are going to have
that's right.
a wake up call. Okay, so
I just saw that recently, Los Angeles and New York, and I think Minneapolis and a couple other bigger cities, they're getting money for to combat crime, and that's definitely like a bailout in disguise because they're given billions of dollars from the federal government, like you were talking about. I
there's
don't know
been
if you
tons
guys
of
know.
there's been tons of bailouts going mostly to blue states this year in Florida because they're so vindictive. You know, the CDC just told just you heard about the CDC released that directive. Don't go on cruise. They were telling people. They said don't go on cruise ships even if you're vaccinated. Did you hear about that?
No, no, isn't that at odds with another, like a federal like declaration?
Yep, it is because
It's,
yeah, they contradict themselves constantly. Cruise CDC, cruise ship guidance, quarantine CDC. Let's see if I'll go to the news. CDC warns Americans to avoid cruise ships even if they're vaccinated. And look at what we have here, a picture of Miami. And this is obviously another targeted attack at Florida.
right, at the Florida industry, the Florida's economy.
Exactly. They've been using, especially with the cruise industry. They remember all the drama with shutting down the cruise industry earlier this year, late last year, and all of that. It went to the Supreme Court, I think, and everything. They finally gave up on that. Now they're so vindictive and they want to hurt Florida in any way they can. In any way they can. Because they're just that vindictive. And even on this news article, MSN, they make a point of showing a picture of a Miami of because this is the biggest cruise harbor, Miami, Florida. It's like, haha, we're gonna get those Floridians. How vindictive can you be? I mean,
Right.
and
No,
this is after they.
people want youth and suffering that stay in these places, in these cities. I mean, I can understand how the governors were playing a game. While Trump was president, you could see that they were expecting to be bailed out. They went all in to try to get a Democrat in the seat of the executive, Biden.
True.
And it was like they knew
That's
they
a good
create
point.
enough suffering and misery and destruction. They encouraged this rioting.
Well,
They were catch and release. They were inciting violence and rage and
excuse the
they knew they would
fireworks,
be
by
bailed
the
out
way.
later on.
But I think the fireworks adds a certain ambiance. You made a good point, and the point is that maybe the main reason they wanted so hard to get Biden in there was to because they knew they would get federal money, and if they didn't get Biden in there, then they would have a serious fiscal crisis in some of these. I should close this window though; it's way too loud. Let me see if I can close this window. Yeah, I gotta close this window. Oh, it is closed. Okay. So yeah, that's a good point you just made there. That maybe most of what it's all about the money. It always is. Imagine if California didn't get bailed out this year. They were looking so bad fiscally, and maybe that's always what it's about. It's always about the money. It's a good point. I never really thought of it that way. Mm-hmm. So
I noticed that also under the radar, Biden said something about because now the optics of COVID, it's kind of out of his control and people don't really care so much anymore. Once the fear, as far as the lockdowns being popular, the mandates being popular, they're kind of losing steam because people aren't afraid of the Omicron variant, less and less. And now he comes out and has the same. He's been enacting the same policies Trump had been all along, really, with the COVID response. Even though he platformed and campaigned, that he was going to do something. Now he's saying that it's a problem that should be left to the states. That Trump had let states determine their own regulation and their own, methods at taking care of during the pandemic, which we're not even in a pandemic anymore. But that was quietly swept under the rug. The mainstream media didn't, make a big deal about that.
Yeah, and at the same time, he's publicly urging the Supreme Court to affirm his vaccine mandates, which they won't. There's hardly a chance that they will. I mean, it would be shock the hell out of me if they did. But he's, on the one hand, saying that it's up to the states, and the other hand, publicly urging the Supreme Court to uphold his vaccine mandates. So people have have questioned whether this is actually. I think, I do the Occam's razor thing. I think that just the administration is inept and Biden is inept and incompetent. But there's people out there that point out that, confusing the population could be a good psychological tactic. So it's an intriguing idea, but I think it's more incompetence. Just, the government's really, the head of the government is brain dead, and they have no leadership. And without leadership, you're going to see it get worse and worse up there in D.C. And I love it. I think it's great. I want 4 more years of this. I don't want a good president. I want as bad a president as possible, because a good president, a good leader, will just delay what has to inevitably happen anyways, which is the federal government has to collapse in on itself. A good leader might keep it going for a while, and that would just delay everybody. That would just lengthen everybody's suffering. So I'm perfectly fine with it. I think it's great.
So when Biden is empowering and weaponizing these federal agencies, to selectively enforce and to go after people, keep getting shot down with the mandates. And of course, CDC was shot down. OSHA was shot down. There's exemptions, religious exemptions for the vaccines, and they're getting shot down. That makes them look bad also, but at the same time, they're increasing the scope of these agencies. The IRS, just like Lois Lerner's IRS, weaponized against political opponents, and they're giving more scope to these agencies. And that's one thing. I don't know, is it incompetence there? Like these how does this affect our life, really?
Well, that's what all government administrations and bureaucracies have always done throughout history. They are parasitic. They're just like leeches. They grow. They expand their power. They can't. An administration, whether it was the eunuchs of China or the janissaries of the Byzantine Empire or the tax collectors and constables of Louis XVI's monarchy, they all do the same thing. They seek to expand their power. They seek to expand their reach. They seek to exploit the population, exploit their position as much as possible. And this is what they always do. And it always ends up with the whole house of cards collapsing in on itself, usually under the feet of a pitchfork-waving mob. And this is what's happening here. This is what's happening here, and it's just...
You can't help but prop themselves up and propagate themselves and perpetuate.
They can't, because they don't have a mind of their own. When you're talking about a large group of people like a bureaucracy, it no longer thinks rationally. I've said this many times. It thinks instinctually. If you take a group of people, put them in a group, and in a gaggle, like say get a mob of 1,000 people, okay, and then just fire some shots in the air and see what they do. They're all going to start running, and they're going to start running in different directions, but then they're all going to go in the same direction, because then the herd mentality takes over. And that happens in government organizations as well. The behavior becomes instinctual. The IRS cannot... it's always going to move in one direction. It can't move in the other direction. It's like a herd of wildebeest. It's going to go in one direction. You know, that's a consequence of the fact that we're social animals. So they're always going to seek to expand their power until, and they can't stop, even if they see the consequences of what they're doing right in front of them, like the French monarchy did in the 1700s. They knew it was going to be they knew that there was shit was going to hit the fan, but they couldn't stop exploiting the population, you know, and then the whole thing fell apart. Same thing in the Soviet Union, you know, the whole thing fell apart, but they knew it. Everybody knew, you know, the Soviet Union's interesting. That's a whole different subject. I was reading the other day, not reading. Peter Schiff said the other day, and I'll let you talk. I'll let you bring up something, whatever you want. But one thing Peter Schiff said was, it's a very good. He brings this up He's brought this up a couple times recently. He always has these nice little tidbits of history, and he said in the Soviet Union, you know, they couldn't control all of the images coming in from the West. So when all these pictures came in and these videos of the store shelves in the United States and Western Europe stocked full of stuff, you know, and there was always like plenty of stuff at the stores. The Soviet Union, the Soviet government said, oh, that's because over there in the West, everything is so expensive that nobody can afford anything, so the store shelves are full all the time, right? That's what the Soviet Union told the people. And the people bought it for quite a while. And then the people, you know, why are our store shelves empty? That's because the people of the Soviet Union are able to afford to buy the products, so that's why there's never anything on the shelves, because we have so much wealth here. So they did. That's what that.
Games, they always have to control the flow of information
Right.
to maintain control. Like you said before, that they'll relinquish any power or acknowledge separation of powers and checks and balances. They'll always go ahead and try to, you know, seize more power, and then they'll have to control the flow of information and censor everybody and control what people see to control the narrative.
They want to. The thing is
really goes,
once and this goes for individuals too. Once an individual human being starts accruing power, it's like Jordan Peterson says, serotonin gets released in their brain. They start to act more instinctually. Once you get a taste of that power, you want more. You become an animal, more animalistic. You can't think rationally anymore, so you're going to make decisions that are going to maintain and increase your power against all logic. So it goes for groups of people. Think instinctually and act instinctually, and that's why there's nothing you can do about when there's a flow of society going. And then individuals who have a lot of power also tend to act more instinctually the more power they get, because then that brings out the animal instinct in you. So Stalin couldn't help but start to, you know, be brutal because the power was already in him. He started to get a God complex, and then that's how humans, then you can't think rationally anymore. You only think instinctually. I don't know if that makes much sense,
and they
but
follow that same path towards power. Once the opportunities and those outlets are there, then, you know, they empower the administrative state, which empowers the bureaucratic state, and then that's just...
And the bureaucrats also... The bureaucrats also fall victim to that animal fucking instinct once they get that power, because being like IRS agents... They fall under that, and then they start to act.
Social pathologies.
Yeah, you start seeing that. So that's why there's nobody that can fix the United States, because our system is corrupt. We have a huge bureaucracy that's going to act instinctually and not rationally. So you can't go up to them and tell them, no, that's not good what you're doing. No. They don't give a fuck, because they're a herd now. They're not a single person. They don't have the ability to rationalize anything. They're going to go, as a group, it's going to flow only in one direction. One or two people may try to push against the current. They're not going to get far, because the entire group is going, like millions of government workers are going in this direction. Anybody who goes against the current, whistleblowers, they get silenced, and the system is designed that way. Our system, it's the reason they call it systemic corruption. Go ahead.
The systemic corruption. That's from the efficiency of this machine.
It's because the laws are actually designed to keep the status quo going, which is the corruption. So our laws actually encourage the corruption and keep the corruption going. That's why, it's not illegal for Nancy Pelosi to do insider trading, but it is illegal for Martha Stewart to do it. That's an example of the systemic corruption.
Yeah, and there's selective enforcement, and that's another sign
Yeah.
of a country that has massive like centralized authority. I want to say communism type of system where there's so many laws that can't be followed, and they're selectively enforced, and the hornets get away while the flies get caught.
There's this really good president of Czechoslovakia. Do you know this guy's name? So under the boot of as a satellite state, because I remember Czech when I was a kid, when we were behind the Iron Curtain, and even after when we came to the West, I remember it more. And Czech was like,
what is the president's name there? They just abolished how did they do this? They eradicated communism out of their parliament or something like that?
Recently?
And they celebrated it as bans?
Recently,
yeah. I guess they celebrated that they were communist free in parliament. They didn't have anybody with those.
So there were a couple presidents in Czech Republic that were like really interesting, and I want to find out. I'm gonna look into it more. Czechoslovak Socialist Republic. There was a president who resisted communism as he was president. Czech Republic was probably the most resistant to communism when they were behind the Iron Curtain, and he's the guy. He wrote a book, and he said, and it's people you hear about this term parallel structures and parallel economies. And that's what he kind of said. In Czech Republic, when they were under the boot of the Soviets, what ended up happening, this happened in East Germany too, but in East Germany, they were really beating us down, so we had to keep it really quiet. But you had secret churches and secret, secret libraries where people would get books, and secret cinemas. Even those were hard to find, but in Czech Republic they had a lot of that. They had a lot of parallel structures. And I gotta find this guy's name. What was his name though? Czech hero of the Velvet Maybe it's this guy, Vala. Yeah, I think it is this guy. There was a couple of them in Czech Republic, but this guy who died.
What age? What era are you talking?
He was during communism in Czech Republic, when Czech Republic was basically just a satellite state, kind of like East Germany was. Basically, we were subject states of the Soviet Union. So what they did in Germany is they made East Germany into a factory, and they worked people to death in the factories. We were basically slave labor. I was very young, but my family were like slave labor. On the East German side, the people that were in East Germany, they were all slave labor. So that's what they did in East Germany. They treated the East Germans really bad. But I guess I can't get on this webpage. But this guy, Václav Havel, I don't know much about him, so I don't think it's really appropriate to talk about him because I don't know enough about him. But he's the guy who he wrote books about how they resisted the communism and how they kept, throughout the communist years in Czech Republic, communism never really took really firm hold in Czechoslovakia because they had parallel economies. They had just all these little things they were doing to keep communism from really taking over. So communism never really took over. And I remember as a kid,
human suffering to thrive. As long as there's little pockets of resistance where people are doing well, and they have these little alternate parallel economies.
And he's the one that said the best weapon is ridicule because they don't know how to react to ridicule. He said parallel structures and ridiculing the rulers because, first of all, they don't have a sense of humor. They don't like being made fun of, and they don't know how to react to it because, massacring people just because they're making jokes about you, that doesn't even make the person doing the massacring feel better. Yeah, so he's a guy I believe that came up with that. So I need to read more about him, but he's an interesting fella.
He would get a kick out of Winnie the Pooh there, wouldn't he?
Oh yeah, he would. Yeah, it says I guess he died like 10 years ago at the age of 75. But Czech Republic, I know, had a lot of uprisings against the Soviet Union. And I was going to say, I remember Czech Republic as always being that place. Poland was kind of like this, but Czech Republic, this is after we left because I was too young while we were there. But after I left, they always said Czech Republic was the place you can go to get whatever you want that's illegal. It's like, the black market of Eastern Europe. You can get anything you wanted there that was, contraband. So I remember that about Czech Republic. Now it's called Czech Republic. Back then it was called Czechoslovakia or something. So I thought that. So his name is, if you want to read about him, is Václav Havel, and you should read about him. I think I'm going to read more about him. He seems like he just wrote a couple books about how to resist authoritarianism and authoritarianism generally. So a lot of people have been. I think Dave Smith, the libertarian guy, was talking about him. And so what else? What else is going on?
What do you mean? Aside from, I think now.
What are you thinking? What are you thinking
9
about?
9 o'clock, New Year's Eve.
Yeah. So what else are you thinking about?
It's kind of a trip being out here in New York.
Mm.
I mean, I've met some interesting mixes of people who feel, I think the people that are more vocal are just less afraid to speak up now, I guess. They've had enough. A lot of people I see have had enough of the mandates, and they know the psychological implications that it has on like their kids and the communities, and they're getting tired of speaking up about it and then getting shamed and shut down by people that are becoming overt authoritarians, that
petty tyrants.
Petty tyrants, yeah. Because we're at the phase now. It's like it's hard to have a discussion about the pandemic when everything's so mild now. It's like, for one, you can't have nuanced conversation. Everybody's ideologically entrenched in their side, in their tribe. So
that goes for the Trump supporters too.
About mandates, about lockdowns. They make it about their medical opinions, and nobody's qualified to have a medical opinion. Trust the science, like they're a little cult. So they don't let you have a conversation about the
even
lockdown.
though the science they follow constantly, the science that they pretend to advocate for, it constantly is contradicting itself.
Constantly shifting and changing. Yeah. And I mean, if you could question science, that's what is the saying? Like, if it's science, if it can be questioned. If it's not, if it can't be questioned, it's propaganda.
Einstein was wrong on a few things. He's the greatest scientist who ever lived. He didn't believe black holes existed. Okay.
He would have said something along those lines also.
Well,
testing
Einstein himself would have been. Let's see. He didn't believe black holes existed. It took us a long time to really prove black holes existed. But now we have a fucking picture of the black hole. It's right here. So Einstein didn't believe that black holes existed. He was the greatest scientist ever. He should be. So if Einstein was wrong, surely, and that wasn't the only thing he was wrong about either. If Einstein was wrong,
we rallied around him like a cult icon, and then we criticize other people for questioning Einstein and develop like a little cult following around him.
We should. Anybody who questions Einstein, for example, if you say that dark matter exists, which is the consensus among physicists, even though I'm not a doctorate in physics, I don't have that much physics training, but I'm not sure dark matter exists, but most physicists, theoretical physicists, believe dark matter, something that is not visible, that doesn't interact with light or most radiation, exists in the universe. Einstein didn't believe in the dark matter either. He actually saw it in his equations, and he said there's no way that's real. There's no way. So he was wrong about dark matter. That's something that every scientist now believes. It hasn't been proven yet. And he was wrong about something else. And I believe it's possible that there's major flaws in Einstein's theory of gravity, which is why people are trying to come up with dark matter, because something in Einstein's theory of gravity, when you get to really big structures like, go ahead.
Expand upon, right? Which is that's what the continuation would, in the search of like progress.
Yeah, you can't have progress at all if you're not allowed to question something, right? How can you have progress? But see, they don't. It was Ibn al-Hasham, I think, or something like that. He was the guy who invented the scientific method. He's also one of the guy. He invented lenses for like glasses, and science is a process. It's not. It's not I've heard people say it's not an institution. It's a process. Okay, you can't.
So science as an institution,
That's what the way they see it, because they see everything as an institution. Because those people who say stuff like that, oh, the science, you can't question. Those people worship institutions, like you said, cult. They're institutional cultists.
They have their degrees and they think that's the end all. Like, I'm the authority on this subject.
Yeah.
So therefore, everything on this is regarding, medicinal or medical industry, so therefore you don't have an opinion, just do what I say. And
they have their degree measuring contests.
Pretty ignorant.
They have their degree so you're in Syracuse. So in Syracuse, right? Syracuse, right? Or is it Rochester?
Yeah.
You're in Syracuse.
Syracuse at the moment.
How far is that from New York?
2.5 hours. Central, the middle of the state. Central New York.
So, are there like places that are refusing to do the vaccine mandates at all, or mask mandates, like establishments, anything like that? Are there well, you don't have to tell if there are places like that. First of all, don't tell me where they are. Just say yes or no.
It's not trickling down that quickly. From what I see, they're just rolling this out more. Because recently they reinstated the mask laws. So any building, everybody has to be wearing a mask. It's, public space or private business. It's a county-wide, statewide mandates on masks. So there's new set of compliance right now for bars and restaurant venues and concert halls that. Upstate New York is different because in the city, in New York City, Mayor de Blasio, while he was mayor, he had signed the executive decree on that everybody had to check, private businesses had to check, even for kids, kids 5 to 11, they had to check for their vaccination status in order to get a slice of pizza or get, anything to go see a show, see a movie. And they're starting to implement this upstate. And it's slowly rolling out, but I don't see it slowing down. I don't see as many people complain and say they're going to do something about it. I don't really see very much because it's rare. I see a couple people not wearing the mask here and there, and they're quickly complying. Their jobs are on the line, their careers, and they never know who's spies who are going to sit there and feel some type of way and try to get them fired from their job. And the peer pressuring is still on the side of, the panic peddlers, the people who are fear mongering. They still have a little power, and even if it's just from, the compliance that's passed down onto these businesses, they're not really resisting. But right now, I don't think it's a law that they have to be mandated to show the vaccine passports upon entering an establishment, because they have the choice. It's like the false choice. They can either check for masks, everybody has to wear a mask constantly, or they can go check vaccination status at the door. So a lot of places are opting, with this false choice that they have that they don't have to wear the mask. So it's like one or the other. So they're checking
So
vaccination
New
status
York, in New York,
willfully.
in New York, you have to have the vaccine passport. There's no option.
Yeah.
But in the city, but outside right now at the moment, you're gonna either force patrons to wear a mask or force them to show a vaccine passport.
Yeah,
Is that
so
right?
this is for like bars, restaurants. I think it's just right now bars. And as far as I know, it was only for the bars that are open certain hours.
What?
To have an extended permit. I should look into this, but I think the operating hours were like not during the height of the pandemic because places were closed, but they were restricted still on what hours they could be open. And in order to stay open till like 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, which I think here it's 1, maybe closing call. I remember 1 o'clock. But Buffalo is 4 a.m. Buffalo, they have a permit to drink till 4 o'clock in the morning at the bars, but it's restricted. But then in order to get their rights back to have 1 o'clock closing call, they had to accept these conditions and these terms.
What was and before that? It's 12 o'clock or 11 o'clock.
I'm not sure. I don't want to.
Oh yeah. But
it's
fine.
I know it's conditional. It's conditional where they have to accept the terms. It's like that false choice. Like
in New
you
York,
have to accept the terms in order to maintain your cost of operating business. With the same way that things were before, the same requirements as before. Now you have to give up rights in order to have what you once had before. Because they play the game of restricting you and then easing up a little bit and then restricting more, and then and they're constantly incrementally gaining ground on compliance. So it's totally dangling the carrot, the stick and carrot analogy. And people don't really seem to be resisting it, and people don't. I don't know. I love patients with enough people that are like, oh well, we'll just go for the carrot. How hard is it to bite the carrot without getting mad at the stick, without getting angry at the fact that somebody is waving a stick with a carrot on the end? They don't seem to really, and the people that do aren't speaking up enough about it.
I think at the end of the day, the main thing that's going to happen is more and more people are going to vote with their feet, and when New York's a shadow of its former self, they'll finally admit that they, without actually admitting they were wrong, they will tacitly admit they were wrong by, stopping the stupid policies. But only after, again, going back to what I said earlier, these bureaucracies are multicellular organisms that act on, and each cell is a person, but they're organisms as a whole, and they act on instinct, so they can eat. There's no way a bureaucracy or a administration can actually think rationally about this. They're just going to continue to do what they're doing until until shit falls apart. There's no way to stop it. And that's just based to me, as a student of history.
That's how you said that. Vote with your feet.
Yeah, vote. Yeah, that's what people are doing all over the country. So that's crazy. And then I hear Quebec. I was just watching Viva Fry. And he was all pissed off. You know how Viva Fry, his hair is all crazy. He's all pissed off. And he's saying that in Montreal, Quebec, they have a curfew tonight on New Year's Eve. Isn't that insane? Let me know when you have to go, by the way. Just let me know when you have to.
I can't believe that. In Montreal, they have a curfew. Wow.
That's what he was saying.
Just implemented.
Apparently, yeah. Let's look at. That's why we got the screen share. Let's look at this real quick. Because he lives in Montreal, which is French Canada, and guess what? We got Canadians at the yin yang down here right now, especially French Canadians. Montreal, Canada, curfew, New Year's Eve. They said something about. Millions in Canada under COVID-19 curfew on New Year's Eve. RT is RT. To me, RT is just as good as Fox News or any. They're all the same to me. RT will say some things that most American papers won't, but they won't say anything bad about, the Russian government, of course. So, yeah, Francois Legault announced the policies on Thursday which this is dated. Oh, yesterday. Yesterday they announced. Yesterday, the day before New Year's Eve, they announced a curfew.
Before there could be any organized backlash.
Wow. Yeah, you're right. Just because they didn't want to. They didn't want to. Wow. I want to see. I think what's going to end up happening tonight is that I don't know. I'd be surprised if people don't go out anyway and they can't really enforce it. This may be an unenforceable mandate, but if they actually go through, if the people actually, yeah, Quebec. So it's just for Quebec on New Year's Eve. Wow. And we know that.
I just want to see this get to the point where this is unenforceable. Really, if people just stop. My daughter gets a kick out of it. Audrey gets a kick out of it. That I'll roll down the window and talk to somebody. I'll see somebody walking from a parking lot to their car, breathing cold air, just like the last few moments before they have to walk in the store and put their mask on. I'll roll down the window and I'll tell them, I'm like, hey, you don't have to put your mask on. Like, you don't have to wear a mask if you don't want to. I'm like,
you do that?
Pandemic's over. I want it to be. And then she gets embarrassed at first, then she laughs, and people are like, huh? I'm like, yeah, you don't have to wear the mask if you don't want to. And then, they probably think about it for a second, and then I hope it resonates a little bit, because I just want to tell people, like, if enough people don't, like, it's unenforceable, and they give up on it. I'm
starting to feel animosity towards people who wear masks, especially outdoors. I mean, in the hospitals, we all have to wear masks. But when I see people wearing masks outdoors, I do feel a fair bit of animosity. I hate to say it, but I've always been one I've always had easy to get upset about things like that. But even
it's
down
personal choice, I understand that, but it's like they're showing like a show of numbers of conformity and compliance, and it leads to more, exploitation.
Well,
the more people comply, and if there's not anybody resisting, and the peer pressure, I don't care. It's not an individual choice anymore. If you're on the side, of, the authority, and you're just like encouraging and pressuring and pushing everybody else to, and you're one of the people just compliant with this, and because if you don't really believe in it, and you're not really that worried about your safety, and you're just doing it because of compliance, like, you don't want to be called out, and you got something to lose, your fucking job is on the line, like, at a certain point, it's just like, compliance, because then I don't want to hear these people that they come, not crying about it, but, complaining and saying that how messed up it is, but yet they don't want to do anything. They want to keep masking up against their better judgment, against their will. That's where I kind of...
Is it an outdoor, is there an actual outdoor mask mandate up there? Do you know?
I don't think so. There was. Now, and it just says they're required. They use the strong language when you walk into a place. Like, state law, masks are required now because, they would change from strongly recommended. There were different phases, and they use the harsh language based on, a mandate, which New York State, what is it? The emergency, it's an emergency executive order. It's not
I see what it is.
There's a constitutional fucking amendment during an
What are you saying? I'm sorry, I was looking something up. You're saying what about a constitutional amendment?
It's mandate. It's by a decree. It's by a state mandate. It's not a law.
It's right here. Wait, is this? Let's see the date for this. I think this is recently, right? No, this is April 27th. Let me see if there's a new. This is April 20. It's probably lifted by now.
The city is different because.
Oh yeah, I'm sure.
They have jurisdiction.
Paris reintroduces an outdoor mask mandate. Wow, that's interesting. DC with indoor proof of vaccination mandate. New York's okay. Well, I don't know. Maybe not. Maybe it's that what they do is what they did earlier this year is they said you have to wear a mask outdoors when unable to socially distance, which means basically you don't have to wear a mask if you don't want to. Because how hard is it to be 6 feet away from somebody when you're outdoors? By the way, an MIT professor last year released a paper that was peer reviewed and has not been really disproven that social distancing is irrelevant in the spread of COVID. What's really the most relevant thing with COVID is the filter. If you're indoors or outdoors, if you're indoors, it spreads. If you have good filtration, good air filtration indoors, that reduces the chance of catching COVID a lot. And the length of time you spend indoors, presuming other people have COVID, the length of time you spend in a room, coupled with the filtration, will determine, like if you have like a HEPA filter, like most schools have HEPA filters, then that reduces the spread. Schools, airplanes, very low spread of, depending on the school. Some schools and most airplanes have very low COVID spread because the airplanes have fantastic air filtration, So that...
Do these things become a part of the regulations?
No, they ignore it. If it doesn't suit what they want, the politicians want to do, they just ignore it.
Like expanding hospital beds and occupancy. That was never really something that had, big results nationwide or even statewide. They didn't reduce capacity for hospitals.
When did it? Because
blamed and shamed individuals.
No, the United States never had a problem with overcapacity nationwide. In some areas, there were hospitals that were over capacity, but the United States didn't have a problem. Canada, on the other hand, had a problem with their hospitals because, as we know, they have socialized medicine. But the United States never had. Yeah, we never had a problem. We never had a problem here with hospital occupancy. Not a nationwide problem, not even a regional problem. We've had areas around the country, little pockets that were getting close to full capacity.
It's funny. I had a family member who recently, they from their work, they got a whole cases full of COVID test strips, like the test kits, and they asked if I wanted to take some.
Oh my God.
And they were, kind of shocked, and I'm like, no, that's not necessary. Like, I've never been tested. I'm like, at this point, I don't think we should be testing at all. And they're like, kind of an absurd look.
Who's
like,
that?
Who
said this? This is your liberal family, your libtard family.
Yeah, they were kind of shocked that I decided against. I was like, there's no point in testing anymore, and that the way it came across when I said it, they looked at me like it was a really absurd or ignorant thing to say. And hopefully they kind of think on it reflect on it for a second. I mean,
no,
I
doubt it.
And because the only way we're going to put this hysteria behind us, imagine the people that are showing up to hospitals because they got a positive COVID result and they just show up at the hospital like no symptoms. And check me out because I'm scared.
I saw a lot of that.
I'm fucking scared.
I saw a lot of that this week. Trust me, a lot of that. The hospitals were slam-packed full of perfectly healthy people who tested positive. Mm-hmm. I saw one woman, she was leaving the hospital. She said, well, African-American woman. She said, well, the woman asked her, oh, what did the doctor tell you? She said, well, thank God I'm not going to die. Or she said something like that. She hadn't...
into that hysteria.
Like she actually thought that just because she tested positive, there was a chance she was gonna die. All these people are walking into the hospitals. I see them all week.
People that feed into mass hysteria, they're not going to be shamed or told that they're being selfish. They're gonna love it. They're gonna make it look like they're gonna exacerbate this crisis, and it's gonna look like it's something that it isn't. It's gonna be used against everybody.
Well, the only thing that's go ahead, continue. Yeah, I'm sorry.
No.
So the only thing that's going to stop this mass hysteria, I think, in my opinion, is a new mass hysteria or a new crisis. I don't think people are. Yeah, I think people are too used to being in crisis mode at this point. But the next crisis. The next crisis is going to be a real crisis. The next crisis, which is coming next year, is going to be an economic crisis, the beginning of probably the next Great Depression, in my opinion. And people won't realize it probably this year, but this is going to be the beginning of it. But I think that they need a new they people I think now are so used to living under anxiety that they're not gonna stop. They're gonna want some. Yeah, the only thing that's gonna get people off of the COVID hysteria is a new hysteria, which will be inflation, stagflation. That's going to be the new hysteria. But unlike
And
COVID,
you
this
think
is.
it's going to be regional? It's going to be regional, right? With the parallel economies
What do you
and
mean?
as far as like the next type of wave of mass hysteria and crisis,
It's going to be
it's going to
national
be
at least, or even global. Not just regional. It's going to be with the United States at least. Um, it's going to be a hysteria, but it's going to be actually a bona fide, justified hysteria, and you know, you're gonna see. Yeah, I think that's the net. It's gonna go from COVID to that. We're gonna head right into shortages of goods and shortages, maybe even of certain types of food, which you're already seeing. Higher inflation. I was just I put this in my video I released yesterday, my little 4 or 5 view video, where all of the food producers are going to be raising prices starting this month, January, and it's they're all saying it. They've been holding off for the year because I guess they actually believed the Federal Reserve for some reason. I don't know, but I guess these people are either stupid or I don't know what their deal is. But they actually thought this. They actually believed that inflation was going to be temporary, like the Federal Reserve Chairman said. Now they're all saying, "I'll show it to you." And all the energy, FPL, Florida Power and Light, they said they're raising rates starting in January. They had to ask permission from the Florida government to do it, so that's been in the works for a while. Uh,
yeah, I saw
people
some
haven't
type of
big,
information on that.
yep, people haven't begun to experience inflation yet. That we're not what people have saw last year, this year I should say. It's just like the prologue. We're going into chapter one in 2022 is what we're doing, and it's going to be a long book, probably 10 chapters, 10 years. You understand? It's going to be a long book, so
Yeah,
we'll see.
I look forward to seeing all the ways people evade facing this and looking,
No,
directly at.
this is going to be different because once when you start fucking with people's money and their quality of life, like what's going to happen,
Mhm.
you're going to see attitudes change really quickly. Now, here's what's going to happen though: is the Republicans are going to run on fixing inflation, but the reality is they have no answers. Okay, but they're going to run on it. They're going to take over in 2022. Then they're none of them are going to be able to fix inflation. Then they're going to say, "Oh, well, that's because we don't have the presidency. We need the presidency in order to fix inflation." Then Donald Trump comes back in, still won't fix the economic problems that we're going to have. So people are going to latch on to these demagogues. Everybody wants a savior because nobody believes in God anymore. So everybody wants a savior, right? So they're going to latch on to these people, and it's going to drag out a long time because the politicians are all lying. They don't have an answer to inflation. The United States is in a situation that it cannot
Well,
get
people
out
don't
of.
want the answer, right?
What's that?
The answer that will be necessary. People don't want to hear that they have to tighten up their belt or like
It's
make
not.
some,
It's
you know, little choices that are going to be
it's
difficult. Like they don't want the politician telling them
no. It's
they're going to
beyond
have
that. It's
to.
the fact that our planners, our central planners, have been kicking the can down the road for so long now that it's unavoidable. We have to go through a major economic depression in order to get out of this. It's going to be bad, and all they want to do, all a politician wants to do, is hand off the hot potato to the next guy. They don't want the hot potato to blow up in their face. So they're going to try and keep the hot potato cool as long as possible while they're in office, and they're going to pass it off to the next guy. So it's going to get worse, and it's going to get really bad because nobody's going to fix it until it blows up in their face. It's, at that point, there's no fixing it anyway. So
Do you think at the other end of this, are we going to see like maybe hopefully like a downward transfer of wealth because like the wealth disparity, the gap, that's increasing right now, the largest upward transfer of wealth in human history we've been seeing in the last few years, and this consolidation of power through government monopoly as well, like, you know, unfair competitive advantages with government policy. You know, do you think this is going to be a bigger problem, worse, like these
Well, this is
multinational
what always.
corporations? Like, how does this collapse?
Well, the cycle of history is always that power gets consolidated until the people at the top get their heads chopped off, and then the other people come up and they become the powerful people. It's a cycle. That's how it goes.
Okay.
I mean, if you want to talk broadly,
it applies corporate. It applies to like multinational corporations too, right? Because things would eventually decentralize, and they would lose. How would they lose power?
Well, here's what I'm hoping. It could go either way. It can either go towards a figure or a group of people rising into power through demagoguery and promises that are impossible to keep, and then we have like a totalitarian situation, kind of like what happened in Germany. Or it can go the other way, and the federal government dies with a whimper, and the states reestablish their sovereignty, and then we go back to decentralization. So it could go either way. The key is we have to make sure that, well, the key is this. In the United States right now, our culture is so broken right now. Everything is so corrupt that there's nobody around. There are no leaders out there that can possibly consolidate control and create a totalitarian system. So I'm hoping that stays the case, in that the federal government dies with a whimper, and then the states reestablish control.
Charismatic youth fires right now that people follow like messiahs and rally around. We definitely don't need
people
that.
People like AOC. She's dangerous. She's a dangerous person because people literally worship her. She was just in Miami Beach the other day, I heard, without a mask on. She was seen. She was seen in Miami Beach without a mask. Let's see if we can find that. There might have been a picture of that.
I went in Rome. I mean,
yeah, but...
rules for thee, not for me, but... I don't know. Is that like a headline grabber just to divert like attention? I mean, look, could be this to confidence. I don't want to give them more power.
Look at this bitch.
Motives.
Look at this bitch. Look at this bitch.
Yeah.
Fucking bitch. She's dangerous. She's dangerous because she's a type of They call this is like the divider archetype. Someone who uses incites division in order to gain power. So she would be a divider archetype of leader. She's very dangerous because so many young women want to be her. Not because they think she's smart, not because the way she looks. I mean, she's a nice body and all, and her face is okay. But it's because they can relate to her, because she's their generation, and it's also because she's powerful. That's why these women idolize her. So she's dangerous in that respect, because there's a cult of young feminists out there, which numbers in the tens of millions, who will follow her off a cliff because no matter what she does, she can contradict herself, she can be a hypocrite, she can do anything. It doesn't matter. It's not about her policies.
At the end of the day, because she has power.
And they want to be that power. She has the power to crush men. Then that's what they want. And that's what her appeal is. And I've been saying that for years.
I'm realizing they're disingenuous when they're acting like they're speaking truth to power, even though they are representing the authority, and they're just driving, down, like they are, the establishment, and they're pretending like they're still speaking that language, that they're outside of the establishment,
of course,
demanding change, but they're still, that they are the power structure, and they're representing the elite. So
I knew that.
It's disingenuous. In her followers and her, they know exactly what it's about. It's about power.
I knew that as soon as I saw her after she got elected walking around in a $10,000 suit, then I knew right then and there what type of person this really was. And and she's also I think a lot of the way she acts kind of stupid is kind of an act. Kind of like what Stick says George Bush did. George Bush Jr. But
Oh, this shit, you know, playful little dummy.
she wants to be more relatable. It's a way for her to seem more relatable to her. So all of her appeal relies in her relatability and the power she has, and she uses, and then that's what people like about her. So she's a cult idol, but her fans, they don't care about this. They don't care. They don't even care that anything she does, no matter what she does, it doesn't matter what she does. She can shoot somebody on Fifth Avenue, and her fans wouldn't care. Remember, that's a Donald Trump reference. I could shoot somebody, I could murder somebody.
Oh, yeah.
She could do that. Her fans wouldn't care. As a matter of fact, if it was a man she shot on Fifth Avenue, her fans would be ecstatic, especially a white man. And she dates white men too. That's her husband, I guess. I don't even know. But yeah. So what else is going on? I guess you probably need to wrap this up soon, right?
I think my buddy's gonna come down here fairly soon. He's probably on his way. Might do another little podcast. I'll try to get in the mood, and I don't know. It's good practice because it's one thing because I'm always like yap talking your ear off, talking my friend's ear off. Then I turn the camera on, and it's like a little different perspective. It's a little harder than it looks. So I appreciate taking the time to have a conversation and give me practice things.
No, we're gonna do this. We're gonna we're gonna get it live one of these days. We're gonna figure out how to do it live. I guess I'll try Facebook Live or whatever. And your Facebook Live would probably be better. You got like more friends that would actually view it. Mine's just my Facebook's just a political page.
I'm glad I didn't now. Like now, I'm in New York and I have to put chapstick on constantly. My skin is like drying out here. I'm like out of my element. So
yeah.
I don't know.
So I think that was a good conversation. We are at a minute and an hour and 7 seconds. So I'll post this on my YouTube page, my Odyssey, and my Rumble.
Oh, cool. Okay. Yeah, give me a shout out.
Yeah, I'll post it on all three of those. And so where my YouTube is. I don't know if you have a Rumble, but I'm gonna put it. I even have a BitChute, but it's like I'm already uploading it to 3. I don't know how you can upload all of them at once, so I have to do each one separately. So I'm gonna do YouTube, Odyssey, and Rumble, and I'll just do that. And I think we're about done.
Yeah, thanks for taking the time.
All right, it was a pleasure. I'll see you soon. When are you coming back?
We're leaving tomorrow. So
tomorrow.
In about 2 days, I'll arrive by the.
So you're not
3rd?
gonna. Mm-hmm.
Probably on the 3rd.
You'll be back on the 3rd. All right. Well, take care up there. Don't get in trouble tonight. Okay. All right.
No, I'm gonna stay put.
You're gonna stay put. All right.
Happy New Year.
Okay. Happy New Year to you. Okay. Peace out.
Bye.
All right. Okay, so I'll do a little, I don't know, I feel like talking a little bit more. Let's just peruse Twitter real quick. See what's going on Twitter. Red wave. We were just talking about this. We are just one day away from 2022 and the year when a red wave will sweep the nation. And that red wave will not accomplish anything. It will be a wave that will not even dislodge a grain of sand out of our crisis-stricken and corrupt economy, corrupt country. Our crisis-stricken economy and our corrupt administration. It will do nothing. How many people are going into this year and are going to go into the next election thinking that the Republicans are going to be able to fix everything, and they won't. And then they're going to blame the fact that Biden is still president, and then we'll probably get a Republican president in 2024, and then you're going to really see them drop the ball. Uh, God, I hate these people on Twitter. Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. I'd also be happy to share some note as Governor DeSantis. DeSantis actually texted email. Oh no, well, so here we got this Team DeSantis. I guess that's just some Twitter, fan page of DeSantis. That's funny. So remember this, okay? We're going to have whatever. Just remember that you're gonna, just like last year, we're going to be fed a lot of bullshit this year. Stop watching TV. Okay, so here goes some New Year's things to do. Stop if you're watching TV, whether it's news. The only thing I would approve of is sports. If you're watching anything on TV besides sports, stop watching it. Period. If you people that do that will be a lot better off. Look at this. Republicans are mad because they can't date me. Wow, what a narcissist. Republicans are mad because they can't date me. AOC lashes out at critics after being caught in Florida. Republicans are mad because they can't date me. Wow. Okay, well, I don't know. I think we're done for for today. We had a nice little conversation. I think 2022 will be interesting. I'm out.